Is going to be, we've got a lot of presenters and a lot of great information. The morning is focused on the commercial banks, and now this afternoon we're going to talk about the role that the government plays and along the line of helping our producers be successful. You heard several of the morning presenters make reference to the Farm Service Agency. It's one of the agencies through USDA that deals with some conservation programs. They deal with lending. They work with guaranteeing loans and also direct loans. So we have a great team of folks back here in the back from Farm Service Agency. I'm going to call up April Faircloth. She's with the USDA FSA Farm Loans team, and she'll introduce the rest of her team and walk through and show the role of the government and the Farm Service Agency. Let's give April a big hand. Yay!
Well, they asked me to introduce everybody. So I'm April Faircloth. I'm Farm Loan Manager out of the Southampton County office. And in the back, we have Diane with us. She is our outreach coordinator for the state. We've got Stephanie, who works out of our Suffolk office, and she's beginning a farmer rancher coordinator for the state. And then we have Samantha, who is now the county executive director in our Southampton County office. So that's who we have here today. Of course, we have offices all across the state. Some cover multiple counties, some cover an individual county. Oh, where should I aim this? There we go. Okay. So a brief little bit on FSA. So we are one of the many agencies under the USDA, the Department of Agriculture. Of course, we have offices all across Virginia and all across the nation. And then I am going to focus on farm loan programs today. So we kind of have two different divisions within FSA. We have farm programs that will do like your farm sign-ups, eligibility, price support, conservation type programs, and then farm loans, which focuses solely on the loans and lending program. Some of the kind of highlights of our programs: we can work with beginning farmers, experienced farmers when they can't get credit elsewhere. So like the three lending institutions that spoke this morning, if for some reason you're not able to qualify with credit with them at any time, that's when we become an option. Since we are a government agency, we can't compete with them. We can't take that business away. But if you're unable to get credit with them, or if we're looking at something where maybe they can only lend part of your needs, but you need part with us, we can look at doing some blends where we work together. So there's FSA loan officers in the local offices that are available to answer questions, help you get through the application process. With farm loans in Virginia, I believe we have 7 farm loan offices now that cover multiple counties. Like me in Southampton, I think we cover about 17 counties in the southeast corner of the state. There's an office on the Eastern Shore. There's an office in more central Virginia that kind of covers the Boynton, Farmville area. So some of our general eligibility requirements: of course, you have to be a U.S. citizen, you have to have acceptable credit history, and like we kind of touched on earlier, we don't have any sort of credit score requirements. We are going to run a credit report, but we're going to be looking at, are there any late payments, are there any collections, are there any judgments on any of the loan applicants? And then kind of have to dig into the reasoning and the timing of that, more so than having some sort of strict credit score cut off. We need to know that depending on the loan you're asking for, what your training and experience has been in operating a farm. Depending on the amount of money you're borrowing, what you're going to spend that on is going to have different requirements. And we need to know that you're the actual owner, operator, or tenant operator of a farm. So either you own the land and are working it, or you're renting it and working it. For example, we can't do loans if you want to buy a tract of farmland, but then you want to rent it out to another farmer. We want to see that you're the one actually operating that ground. So with FSA, our definition of a beginning farmer is you've been farming 10 years or less. It doesn't matter if you're 20 or 50 or 60 or 70, it's just 10 years or less. And if you have formed some sort of operating entity that there's multiple members of that entity, all would have to meet that definition to be still considered a beginning farmer. So the two basic subsets of our loan programs are operating loans and farm ownership loans. Farm operating loans are typically for things like the purchase of farm equipment, the purchase of livestock, the purchase of your crop inputs, seed, fertilizer, fuel to get through first season. Farm ownership, typically land purchase, or potentially some sort of building construction if you needed to put up a barn or some sort of facility for the operation. Farm ownership loans, where it says we can go up to 40 years, that's an absolute max. That every situation is going to be different, and it's going to be based on your cash flow. So if it looks like you can pay off that farm in 20 years, we're going to make it a 20-year loan. But we do have the ability to go up to 40 if needed. Microloans are kind of a subset of both those ownership and operating. So that's when you've got $50,000 or less that you're borrowing through FSA. The application's a little bit simplified, slightly different requirements as far as verifications and security. And we can use a mentor to replace our experience requirement, but that is on the operating loan side only, because on a farm ownership loans, if you're buying land, we're still looking for 3 years of experience or some potential substitutions if there's been military service or education. So I think all the lenders this morning covered a lot of this really well, so I would emphasize everything they said when preparing to talk with your lender, whether it's FSA or a commercial lender, coming in with your records in your plan. We need to know the business structure. If you are forming an entity, an LLC, a corporation, anything like that, we would need the supporting documents that go along with it. We would need to know who the members are. We would want to know what type of operation. Are you livestock? Are you vegetables? Are you row crop? What your past experience has been in that business plan that addresses your experience, your marketing plan, your financials. Of course, we would need to know what you want to borrow money for and how much. We would want to know a little more than, well, I just want to borrow $50,000. But do you want to spend that on a tractor, a planter? Is that to cover 10 breeding cows and a baler? Give us a general breakdown of what that money's going to. We will want your past financial and production data, so taxes, your income and expense records for the farm, your yield data for what you've been doing. And we suggest anybody, even if you're just starting out, starting small, not quite ready for a loan yet, go ahead and start keeping your records. And if you start increasing every year, you're building that history for when you come into a lender to show what you've done and what kind of trend you've been on. And then, of course, depending on the situation, we might need other information. If you have non-farm income, any sort of military benefits, anything like that, we would want to verify that information. So FSA is supervised credit, and like I mentioned, we are big on record keeping. So keeping those production and financial records up to date. If you get a loan from us, we're going to be asking for that information to be turned in every year. We can require borrower training if your loan's approved. So we would evaluate what your past training and experience is, and if we feel like there's an area lacking, there's potential that as a condition of your loan, we would require you to take additional training. FSA is temporary credit, so one of our goals is to get you to be able to graduate to go with one of these other lenders potentially down the road. If you needed some time to maybe build your operation, expand, but a few years down the road, you're doing better, you're bringing in more income, we might be asking you to try and go and refinance that FSA loan with one of those commercial lenders. Environmental compliance. So anytime dirt is being moved or there's new ground disturbance, if you're building a barn or if you're converting land from trees to another use, we're going to have to do a more in-depth environmental review. So we're going to need plans for the work that you're doing. We're going to need maps. If it's a loan, you're asking for a building, we're going to need like quotes and building specifications for that. It's all part of our review. So the guaranteed loan program, and everybody this morning touched on that a little bit. In our area of the state, we work with all three of the lenders that spoke. We have some different options within the guaranteed loans, and I say in those instances, one way to describe it is you are that bank, that commercial lender's customer, and then the bank becomes FSA's customer. Typically in the guaranteed program, you're doing all your legwork with them in the beginning, then they submit everything to FSA when they're ready to apply for that guarantee. So, and the loan would be made at bank's rates and terms, and then if a default were to occur and the bank has done everything they were supposed to, they can apply to FSA to collect on that 90 to 95% guarantee. We do have some youth operating loans, so if there's somebody under the age of 21 involved in 4-H, FFA, some sort of income producing agricultural product, we can do loans up to $5,000 for them. And we have farm storage facility loans, which is a little bit of a hybrid program. The eligibility and application process for that is actually handled by the farm program side of our FSA offices, and then a loan official would have to review your financials. So we're still typically looking at 3 years historical records for that program, a balance sheet, credit report, and projected cash flow to make sure you can support the payment you're looking at. And that is kind of the highlights of what I had for FSA Farm Loans.
All right, April, big hand for April.